This is Christy Hendricks with Change of Shift, and today's interviewee, I have Vicky Warren from Vicky Warren Writing, and she is she was an LPN, licensed practical nurse. She's got four boys. I don't know how she does all of this, but she ended up having to leave nursing because of some problems with chronic migraines. And I hear from so many nurses who, in the same boat, they can't continue in clinical practice because of some sort of a chronic illness or sometimes injuries. And they're left wondering, well, now what can I do? What am I going to do with a nursing degree? So I have Vicky here to tell us about what it is that she does. And actually, Vicky is a social media coach for solopreneurs. And that's exactly what most of us are, solopreneurs. So I want to welcome Vicky in. Come on in, Vicky.
Hi, Christy. Thank you so much for having me on this interview today.
Hey, it is my pleasure, my honor. So let me just, I just want to go to the beginning, about when you were a nurse, and just tell me a little brief history about your nursing career.
Sure. I kind of jokingly call myself the 30-second nurse. I decided that I wanted to become a nurse right as I was finishing up my associate degree. And I decided that's what I want to pursue and I want to go into that. Well, right as I was finishing up my associate degree and deciding I wanted to be a nurse, I was also thinking about getting married. And so between getting married, moving to Alaska, supporting my husband while he went through school, having a couple of kids, it took me 10 years to get my LPN degree.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it took a long time. And so once I got my LPN degree, I came back to Alaska because I actually went out of state to go to nursing school, and then I came back. And I was able to find a job in a pediatric clinic, and I loved it so much. But here's the thing. I've suffered with chronic migraines since I was 14 years old. Mm. And about 6 months after I was working at the pediatric clinic with full intentions to move on and get my RN, I actually wanted to be an NP at some point, I became pregnant with my third son. And it was a really rough pregnancy. The migraines were horrible. I had hyperemesis. I mean, I was basically in bed a good portion of the pregnancy. I came down with gestational diabetes. I mean, it was just a rough 9 months. And so unfortunately, because of all that, I ended up having to quit my job at the pediatric clinic. And then after I had my third son, 9 months later, I became pregnant with my fourth son. Thankfully, that pregnancy was a lot better. But once my fourth son was born, I remember looking around one day. I had a newborn, an 18-month-old, a 3-year-old, and a 6-year-old. Migraines don't get better. And I just realized that the traditional bedside nursing just was not going to happen for me at this point in my life, and possibly maybe never again. And I'm not going to lie, I was really angry. It took me so long to get there. Mm-hmm. And then I had to give it up. And now I was just like, I don't think this is going to happen for me. So I'm not going to lie, I beat up a few pillows because I was really upset. And one night in October of 2015, I literally had a dream to start a medical story sharing website. And so I woke up the next morning and I started it on a Blogger blog. I don't know if anybody even uses Blogger blogs anymore, but I woke up and I started it, and I went around to different people who I knew who had compelling medical stories. I shared a lot of my stories, and that's kind of how I got started in this whole online thing. So that's my story, I guess, going from taking forever to become a nurse to my very short window of nursing time to how I moved on.
Wow. And it can be tough. And I know a lot of Change of Shift followers are thinking, what do I do now? If nursing isn't even an option for me, what do I do now with a nursing degree? And so many people, so many nurses are left thinking, well, I've got to go back to school. I have to get a master's degree. I've got to get this degree or this credential or whatever. I mean, I was kind of there, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not digging it enough to go back and get a master's in anything. Yeah, and you're kind of going, what do I do now? So it sounds like you found your niche, and I'd encourage nurses to think about what it is that they gravitate towards, what interests them, and start there, and find something that will work in your life, in your lifestyle. So, okay, so now we talked just a little bit about what you do. So I'd like you to give us a little more detail about how you went from the storytelling to social media.
So this is one thing that I want to stress about being like an online entrepreneur. It's taken me a while to find my footing. I'm starting to notice that in my life in general. It takes me a while to find my footing. But so I started out as a blogger, and then blogging is a really large job. I mean, between writing the blogs and then like all of the back end stuff that you have to do, the technical side of it. Mm-hmm. And then you ask yourself, okay, I have this beautiful blog. Now, how am I going to share it? So social media comes into play. Mm-hmm. And then also you have to write because it's a blog, so you're writing. So what I realized after about 6 months of doing the blog is that the part that I really enjoyed was the social media. And so then I started thinking, I wonder if there's a way to take my enjoyment of social media, and turn it into a job. I was like, I wonder if that's even possible.
I know. How can you monetize that?
Yeah, it's like, how can I monetize this? Mm-hmm. So I started looking around, and lo and behold, there is a large amount of need out there for social media managers. I was like, yes, this is exactly up my alley. Uh-huh. But I mean, I've done the blogging. I'm also a freelance writer. And then I got into the social media management, mostly because I was managing my own social media for my blog that I had started.
Mm-hmm. And that's very time consuming. I mean, I've got my social media channels, and I try, because I'm a solopreneur, I try to restrict myself to just a couple. And it is very time consuming, and it is a specialty unto its own.
It really is. There's definitely an art to the whole thing.
Right. You've got to be very efficient. So you must be very, very efficient at what you do, because I know that it takes a big chunk of my time to manage my own social media.
Yes.
Okay, so if there's a nurse out there thinking, hey, I really enjoy doing social media, what are some steps that she can follow? What path can she follow to kind of get herself into that market? And I know that there's so many different directions that you can go in social media. So talk to us about that too, because there's social media marketing, there's social media, management and posting and.
Absolutely, there are. There's tons of avenues that you can take in the whole social media realm. Mm-hmm. So if I were just starting out, again, what I would do, the first step, I would pick one or two of the platforms that you enjoy and that you feel like you're comfortable and confident learning it from the business side. And then simultaneously, while you're learning those one or two, build your own presence on those one or two platforms. So you're learning all the intricacies and you're building your own platform. So when I say build a platform, I mean, you've got it optimized well, you're sharing useful content for whoever it is that you want to work with, and you're building a following. Mm-hmm. So that's what I mean by build it. So you're learning it and you're building it. And there are tons of resources out there. If you want to do like a comprehensive, you're thinking about managing all of the platforms, I really suggest Rachel Peterson's Social Media University or Phyllis and Andrea's Social Media Manager School. Those two are great for like an overall social media manager, and they teach, I mean, they're both great programs.
Mm-hmm.
And then, Pinterest is another big one that's really popular right now. Gina Horkey and Kristen Larson have a program called Become a Pinterest VA. It's another great program if you want to just like focus on Pinterest.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to focus on Twitter, Madeline Sklar is like a go-to guru for learning about Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually have a class that I teach about Twitter, because Twitter and Pinterest are my two favorites.
Right.
And so there are a million like resources. I like to listen to podcasts to learn. Madeline Sklar has a great podcast. Kate All from Simple Pin Media has a great podcast. And there are tons of blogs. So first step, decide one or two, because if you try and do any more than that, you're going to get really overwhelmed. So one or two, and then learn it and build it. That's the first thing. Second step, build your personal online home. So set up a website. You don't have to be a technical guru to set up a website. There's lots of platforms. Squarespace. I personally use WordPress. And if you're going to use WordPress, I suggest getting a WordPress.org one. So you purchase hosting and a domain name. And the reason I suggest that is because you actually own that stuff. So you're not hosting on somebody else's.
Right. And we go into a lot of this on my Change of Shift, the various courses that I have on Change of Shift. We talk about hosting and domains and WordPress and all that.
Yes.
Yeah, you do need to have an online presence. You can't just rely on your social media channel and think that that's it. So tell our nurses, why is that? Why can't I just be on Pinterest or Facebook?
Well, here's probably the biggest reason, because you just never know when one of those might close down. Like, there's always a chance that one of these big social media platforms might just shut its doors tomorrow. Right. And then all of your followers will be gone, and then people won't know about you. Mm-hmm. And not only that, but there's only like a certain amount that you can really portray on social media. The reason you want to have a website of your own is that way it's like it's your house. You tell them about you tell them about your services and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So second step is get that built up. The third step is, personally, I would reach out to someone that you know who has like an online business, maybe even just a regular business, and their social media presence could use some help. And maybe you could reach out to them and say, hey, could I help you with such and such platform? And, in exchange for like a testimonial or something. Mm-hmm. Here's the caveat. I wouldn't do that. You want to get to the point where you're able to have clients pay you. But I feel like to get your own feet wet, managing someone else's accounts, I think it's a good idea. And then once you've got all that built up and you've got a little bit of experience, then I say start reaching out and offering your services as a social media manager. Mm-hmm. So those are the first few steps that I would take to get started.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's a lot just in itself. But and you really kind of have to be very patient with this. It's not like a short term, get it up and running and you're starting to make money or anything like that. Okay, so what are some of the best marketing practices that you can suggest for nurses wanting to start their own business, and maybe even specifically wanting to start a business in social media?
So best marketing practices. So if you want to go into social media, you have to be on social media. And so that would probably be the number one thing, is just getting yourself established on the platforms that you've chosen. so that you have what they call social proof. And then also, just being social on social media. So if you create a Twitter account, for example, and if people tweet to you or mention you, make sure you're reaching back out. Or if you have a Facebook group, make sure you're talking to people. So just making sure that you're being social on social media, because that's really the key to social media is that part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to think, is that what you mean by marketing practices? Or
yeah. And one of the other things that I would ask you, because everyone has their opinions about this. If you're on, like, say you're on a social media channel, what are your thoughts or what are your opinions about how frequently you should post, say, on your brand page?
Oh my goodness. So every platform is different. So on a Facebook business page, I think you should post a minimum of 5 times a week. On Twitter, I think you should post a minimum of 5 times a day. Instagram, I believe right now is about once a day, is what they suggest.
Mm-hmm.
Pinterest can be a little tricky. Pinterest, I don't know. I've had luck pinning about 10 times a day, but I've also had luck pinning like 25 to 30 pins a day. So that one, Pinterest is a different bear. It's not necessarily a social media network at this point. And then, so I think that covers the 4 bigger ones.
The big ones. Yeah. Now, what would you say then? Because I know that you started out saying if somebody's starting out and they want to be working in social media and they want to build their presence, and you said you recommended the same thing that I tell my followers, and that is start with just 1 or 2 channels, because it's like a rabbit hole, and you kind of need to get pretty proficient at 1 or 2 before moving on to the rest. So what would you say then to a nurse entrepreneur, solopreneur, who is saying, oh my gosh, 10 times a day? That's crazy. How could I ever come up with that many posts in one day?
Right. So, so here's my secret sauce. Once you have your business plan of what you're going to do, you create what you call content buckets. And basically, it's just like categories that you're going to speak to on social media. So, for example, I'm in social media, so I tend to talk about like each of the bigger platforms, but I also talk about email management, and I talk about like productivity hacks. I'm also a mompreneur, so I talk about that stuff. But you come up with like 5 categories of what you want to speak to on social media. And then once you have those categories, you curate content during the week. So like if you're surfing around on Pinterest and you find a pin that you think would be useful to your audience, you save that. Or if you're surfing around on Facebook and you find a great article, you save that. So you're curating content as you go every day. Because if you're anything like me, you're reading and you're on the internet, quite often, and you're finding stuff that would probably resonate with your audience, no matter what your niche is. Mm-hmm. So you curate as you go, and then you sit down once a week and you use a scheduling tool, something like Buffer, Post Planner, Co-Schedule, Tailwind. I mean, there's a million of them.
There's a lot. Mm-hmm.
And then you grab those curated pieces that you've been saving and you stick them into your scheduling tool. And if you do it that way, it's not nearly as overwhelming.
Right. And, just like you said, those different post planners, Buffer, I use Social Bee. And for my platform, for Social Bee, I'm able to just save articles that I find here and there, save it to Pocket, and then my Pocket will just feed into my buckets.
Yeah.
And then you're able to tag them, and so then they'll go into whatever page or whatever group or, what have you. So, okay. it's quite an education. You have some really good tips. Now, what I'd like to ask you, and you did mention a lot of names at the beginning, but what are some good networking groups or good other, teachers of social media, just networking groups, maybe groups that you belong to on Twitter or something, or Facebook, whatever, that a nurse who's kind of leaning towards doing something in social media, where might she find support?
Absolutely. So, Rachel Peterson, who does Social Media United, has a free Facebook group, and I believe it's called Social Media United's Facebook or something. I don't know. If you type in Rachel Peterson on Facebook, her groups will come up. That's a super awesome community there. So that's one.
And yours? And you said you had one too, right?
Yes, I have a Facebook group. It's
okay.
called Social Media for Solopreneurs, and I would love to have everyone join that. And then, so on Twitter chats are amazing. There's one called Twitter Smarter. There's one called Social ROI. Those are two of my favorite ones as far as like the social media goes. Mm-hmm. And let's see, Kate All from Simple Pin Media has a really great Facebook group that you can join in. And I'm trying to think. Those are probably my favorites that I have right now. So yeah.
Okay, so now, and I'm just trying to kind of arm these nurses with lots of helps and lots of resources, so when they go into it, they kind of know where to go, the go-to places. So what about you did talk about some planners, what about some different tips or tools of the trade that you like to use?
Tips or tools. So for content curation, I like to use feedly.com. I also like to use Pocket, and Christy, you talked about Pocket just now. Mm-hmm. And then I love to utilize Pinterest secret boards. So when I'm flying around on Pinterest, I pin stuff to my secret boards. Mm-hmm. And then, I love motivational quotes on Twitter. And so I have spreadsheets, like literal Google spreadsheets and Excel, that I just type in different motivational quotes or like tips and tricks that I want to share. So those are probably my like places that I like to curate content. Uh-huh. And then as far as scheduling tools, I really like Buffer. I really like Post Planner. I like Tailwind and Board Booster for Pinterest. Mm-hmm. There's a program or an app called Planoly for Instagram that I really like. Mm-hmm. And let's see. So those are probably the ones that I like as far as like curation and scheduling. Mm-hmm. And then to make graphics and that kind of thing, I love Canva and PicMonkey. Mm-hmm. Let's see.
And you know what? I would say right there, I love Stencil. Love Stencil.
Yeah.
I can create my graphics in Stencil. You can create, different quotes, and they've got all your images. And then you can share within Stencil. You can share directly to your social media channels. Love it. It's so easy.
Love that. I'm gonna have to check Stencil out. You told me about it before, and I still haven't gotten around to it. But yeah, every time you talk about it, I'm like, I gotta try that one.
One of my favorite tools. Now, it's kind of sounding. I mean, you're listing off a lot of really helpful resources. But what about for a nurse who's saying, well, wait a second, I can't pay for all of those. The monthly fees and stuff. I'm going to be, I'm a solopreneur. If I take food off the table, my husband's not going to be very happy.
Right. No, I get that.
So all those different kinds of post planners or posting aids, how many do I have to own? How many do I have to have memberships for? How many do I have to buy?
So Buffer has a free plan. I'm trying to think of what the free plan is. Like, I feel like, I actually haven't looked at it for a while, but Buffer has a free plan.
I think, I'm pretty sure the free plan is like three social media accounts. You get 3 profiles, I think.
I think so too. Mm-hmm. So it just really depends on which platforms you choose, because Pinterest has like Tailwind and Board Booster that are really helpful for them.
Mm-hmm.
Twitter and Facebook, I use a lot of the same tools for Twitter and Facebook. So I use like Post Planner and Buffer.
Mm-hmm.
And then Instagram is kind of another little beast of its own. And Planoly is one that I've really liked for that. So it depends on which platforms you choose.
Right.
And then honestly, you can do it with, like if you choose, excuse me, if you choose, sorry, I have kind of a cold. So
That's okay.
if you choose like Twitter and Facebook, you could just use Buffer and you'd be fine. Or if you just want to do like Pinterest, you could just use Tailwind and you would be fine. So the caveat though is eventually you're going to have to pay for a tool.
Right.
But I don't think that you have to starting out.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And I agree that I think what somebody starting out should do is first, before you even open an account with any of those post schedulers, first decide where you're going to have your presence, because each of those post schedulers has sort of their specialty one, right? They don't all have Pinterest. I know that the one that I use most frequently, Social Bee, is very Twitter heavy, very Twitter heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And then Tailwind is more, Pinterest. So,
Yes.
So first decide what channels you're going to be on, and then go look for tools that help you to be on those channels.
Exactly. And like Buffer, for example, you can post to Pinterest on Buffer, but it's a lot harder than using Tailwind. So, you can do it, but it's not the tool that I would choose for Pinterest.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, Christy, I agree with you completely. Choose the ones that you're going to do and then choose your tools.
Yeah.
Okay,
so now I just want to kind of switch gears a little bit, and I want to find out what, since you started your business in social media, what doors have opened to you now professionally that you didn't have before, like say when you were just starting to transition out of nursing and into business? Like, how has your life changed?
Well, probably the biggest thing is the fact that I've been able to work at home and stay home. My older two kids are in school now, but my younger two are still, fairly little, and I've been able to stay at home with them. So that's a huge plus.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I'm a part of the healthcare marketing network, and I've gotten a lot of really great writing gigs from that. And then for the social media managing, I've made really amazing connections. Like with you, Christy, I think we met on Twitter.
We did meet on Twitter.
I think it was on Twitter. Yeah. I got to tell you, I love Twitter. Twitter is probably the place to reach out and just meet people. It's amazing. I love Twitter.
Yeah, and now I think I was telling you, I'm not a big Twitter fan. I have a presence on Twitter, but you know what? Something about Twitter, whoosh, right over my head, man. Right over my head. There are some things on Twitter I just don't get. It's not my preferred platform, where it is your preferred platform. But so I would say to our listeners, go to where you feel comfortable. Mm-hmm. Go to where your audience is. Those are the two things. Find out where your audience is hanging out. They're going to be on multiple channels. And then out of those places where you find where your audience is, choose the one or two that you're most comfortable with.
Yes. But I do have a caveat to that.
Okay.
I want to tell you a story.
All right.
So when I started my first website, called Living the Diagnosis, I honestly didn't have a presence on very many of the platforms. I had a Facebook page. I once in a while played on Pinterest, had never even thought about Twitter, wasn't on Instagram. I didn't do LinkedIn, I'm sorry, excuse me.
That's okay.
Cool. So when I started, I was like, okay, I got to get onto social media. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to do Facebook. Everybody's going to love this because everybody loves medical stories, right? So I built my Facebook page and, got it all ready to go. and pushed it out to the world and just expected like the likes to come in and all that jazz. And I think like I'd keep pushing refresh.
Yeah.
And like an hour later, I think my mom liked it. I was
Hey, Mom!
And so after about a week or so, I was like, what is the deal? I was like, okay, fine. I'm going to have to branch out. So I was like, well, people talk about Twitter. Okay, fine. I'll try Twitter. People talk about Pinterest. Okay, fine. I'll try Pinterest. And literally, I'm not going to lie to you. I built a profile on all 6 of the big players at the time. Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, Google Plus, if you remember that.
Yeah. Oh no, I think it's still around.
I think it's still around, but
not too many people are over there.
Exactly. And so I built a profile on all of those. And here's what the interesting thing is. Twitter and Pinterest kind of took off for me. Facebook, flat. So what my caveat was with that whole story is pay attention to your analytics. Like, where people are resonating with you and following you and stuff. It might not be exactly what you thought it would in the first place. So just realize that it's completely fine to pivot. It's completely fine to change and go with where you're resonating.
Yeah. It's kind of a, what's the word I want? It's always evolving. It's always changing, and you kind of learn as you go. Like a lot of stuff online with online business, you learn a lot as you go, right?
Absolutely. Oh yeah, absolutely.
And especially for solopreneurs,
Oh yeah, it's constant learning. And the thing that I like about it is you can pivot. There's a lot of jobs that we have, nursing would be one of them, that there's not a lot of, you can pivot, but it's not necessarily as easy to pivot. So, that's probably like been one of my biggest takeaways is just that you have to find your audience, and it might not be exactly where you thought it was when you first start out. And that's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, those are some like amazing tips, really good stuff. I want to thank you for that. Now, I want to make sure that our listeners know where to find you. So please tell us your website.
So my website is called VickyWarrenWriting.com.
Okay. We're going to have this in the show notes too. We'll have it down below.
Perfect.
And of course, then where are we going to find you on Twitter and wherever else that you hang out? Pinterest or
so awesome. My Twitter handle is @VickyWriting. And then I have a Facebook group. I think I mentioned it earlier. It's called Social Media for Solopreneurs. So if you want to come hang out there, that would be awesome. And I am on Pinterest, but Pinterest is like a visual search engine. There are followers and there are messaging, but Twitter and Facebook are my 2 main places that I hang out online. So
okay. Well, we'll find you there. We're definitely going to find you there. Okay. Vicky, I want to thank you so much. Social media sometimes for solopreneurs is somewhat of a mystery and this big black hole, right? And so I appreciate that you kind of, were able to kind of show us the way around, and people can go to your website and get some more resources and find out a little bit more about managing their own social media and such. So I want to just, thank you for your tips and tools and best marketing practices too. So this is Christy Hendricks with Change of Shift, changeofshift.org. For all of you out there, I appreciate your tuning in to see how another nurse was able to successfully make that shift. And we will just see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.